nurses, Governor Bobber, are like, good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
All right, we're live.
Yeah, just the two of us. All right, so this is Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show, and we're missing the chief architect, Dwight Patel, who is traveling down to Florida. There was a report, as I said before we started, Jeff, that he at least had stopped in South Carolina and tried to get a Shamrock Shake and was unsuccessful.
Yes.
I will credit that it doesn't make a difference what time of the year it is. He will continue to try to push the envelope on Shamrock Shakes.
Yeah, I have to say, if he sees it out in the menu, he's going to definitely try it. So that's
right.
Kudos
Yeah,
to him.
I mean, I was thinking with the kiosk, thinking, well, the McDonald's I've been to, I haven't been to one for at least a month or two, but they had been shut down for COVID, and as far as I know, whatever is loaded in there could be just really on a really old menu. Maybe they just haven't gone through there to actually, update everything in there. But it's a step in the right direction if you actually found a McDonald's with a working kiosk, because maybe that's because of South Carolina and not Montgomery County.
Right.
McDonald's is really something about opening up the dining room and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's been the same thing over in your neck of the woods or not.
So the McDonald's that I go to is kind of down the street, and I usually just take my bike there, and I still use the pull-up ordering thing. So I just place a mobile order because it's usually they have specials. So I do I love fish fillets, so they have like a 2-for-1, or like you buy one fish fillet, get the second one for 50 cents more. So it ends up being like $4 for 2 fish fillets, which for me is a good price. So I just order that. Buy down there and then just have them delivered to me, in the parking lot. I'm just, so I think they have it open, but honestly, I just haven't really been inside because it's so convenient still to go and just pull up. So,
yeah, you and I have a lot more in common. I mean, fish fillet, that was like the thing. I mean, I grew up eating a lot of Big Macs, but my number two thing, was like fish fillet. I mean, yeah, for whatever reason about it, it's not necessarily like it's the best fish fillet sandwich around overall. But it's just been around for so long, and I've been eating them for over 50 years. So what am I eating them? Right? Yeah,
right. I think there was something that initially they used, real like Atlantic cod, and then I think they switched to mackerel because it was cheaper. But I don't really know what they use for the fish. But I mean, it's just like one of those flavors you can just always count on. It's like they never really change it. So something about just that, that fish, the breaded fish with a little bit of cheese and the tartar sauce and the bun, it just, I don't know, just like melts in your mouth. So
looks like Craig and David both on lay to be they like those. All right, hey, so guys out there, I'll go for you while we go on and we'll talk about this and some other things. Has anybody ever had the fish sandwich at Chick-fil-A like they serve during Lent? I've always wanted to try it and I never have because I'm a big Chick-fil-A guy too. So I'm kind of curious because people have said that that's a pretty darn good sandwich. So if you've been there, say that. For us, I almost bought some this evening. Jeff, for us old guys too, it's just that McDonald's. The other thing too is that they announced that they're going to have a rewards program. They're now one of the last fast food join the rewards program type of thing like that. So that's going to start in July. So that'll be interesting. But they've got some. They have some great deals on the app.
Oh yeah,
my wife, I will say this. Move on. My wife loves and has loved the hot fudge sundae from McDonald's, right? And if you look on the app, they have a couple of different deals depending upon the time of the year. Sometimes it's buy one get one, which is an absolute steal at this point, or buy one get one for 25 cents. And now, so I'll do this. I'll just go after my workout at the gym, and I'll go buy a couple or whatever and surprise my wife. She tells me not to do that, but she also can't resist eating it. What usually happens is that she takes all the fudge and the chocolate first, and then leaves me the ice cream portion. she's a real. Caramel sundaes are good too. My wife is just a big chocolate lover. Where I'm watching Craig and David come back at us here online. So So rewards program, another reason to go to McDonald's. And I don't know what it was. Yeah, it used to be $1. Well, I think those things used to be even cheaper than that. But but now if you do the 2 for $1 or the buy one get one for 25 cents. You can get a pretty good deal. I have 3 McDonald's that are within a mile and a half of my house.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually done this I didn't do this on purpose. It came up by accident. Is that I found the one place that actually sells it by far the cheapest. I mean, the prices. The prices. There's about a 50-cent McDonald's A to McDonald's C.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't understand the whole franchise system and how they work in that, but I'm like, I now know where I have to go every time I got a Sunday deal when I'm looking for it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. They say participation may vary from store to store. I found like in Taco Bell, sometimes the prices do vary. McDonald's is usually a little more consistent.
Right.
But we talked about this, I don't know, probably 2 months ago about like the soft serve vending machines at McDonald's.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's weird. Apparently, there is like one specific, not just brand, but like model of soft serve, the actual machine that they like obligated to buy, and apparently they can't like modify it, they can't fix it, they can't, But it's the menus are so esoteric, you can't even like work on it. So like they're always breaking down because they're so finicky. But nobody there really is qualified or knows how to work it, because it's not like it's just a simple menu that says, hey, you overfilled the hopper with whatever. It's like gives you these weird numeric codes which nobody has a clue for. So I've still heard stories where and I forget what the website is, but there's like a soft serve down website that like tracks all the different McDonald's that have their soft serve machines.
I think that was either for the McFlurries and or milkshakes, but there was this thing where you could go online and look it up and figure out what machines are out of order and whatnot. So Craig, you're right. We should go to a local McDonald's franchise and we should, or maybe corporate, say, if you sponsor the program, we'll give you look at this without taking any remuneration whatsoever. Send me some digital coupons and give me some free, Jeff. Why not? All right, let's move on to the news. We have lots of news. There's just 2 of us, so it looks like we're going to be talking about a lot more subjects than usual tonight. Pontificating and going off on all kinds of tangents, and I never should know exactly where Dwight's going with stuff like that. Dwight, Dwight is amazing, though. I mean, I have to say, after working with him on this show for the last year plus or whatever it's been, it's amazing the kind of stuff that he knows and he comes up with, which is mostly factual. Not all the time, mostly. I can't, I just have I don't know where he's accumulated all of this, but he has got some pretty good things in his brain there about some of the historical political knowledge that just really comes.
Yeah, he is the mastermind, definitely. I'm the Padawan when it comes to political stuff. I mean, I know the stuff that's important to me. Like I said, I'm recently like transplant back to Maryland, so I'm kind of getting back in the swing of Maryland politics. But I don't live and breathe politics. I try to focus on the things that affect me in my wheelhouse and such. So like jobs, the economy in general, those things are kind of like things I know about. But yeah, Dwight he's a fount of knowledge. So
yeah,
props to him.
So now, see, I wasn't going to do this, Craig, but thank you for bringing this up. Craig, he comes in there with Nixon Agnew, so thank you for being the Dwight.
Got to be said.
Yeah. Well, Dwight will love you for this. We have now done our obligatory Nixon Agnew mention for this show.
Yep. The first 10 minutes, they'll probably be ready too.
All right, some real news, things that we can discuss, just not political in nature, and really, but it's this terrible thing that occurred here with this condo collapse, and I think we do need to talk about this. This is not a Republican, Democrat, whatever type of situation. This is just a horrible human interest tragedy that's occurred here. In the middle of the night, this building collapses. The last thing I saw was 159 people are still missing, 4 were dead. Those numbers, I mean, the numbers of dead are likely to shoot up. They're gonna, if 159 people are missing, sometimes people, they can't always track them, and they may be somewhere else. But this is, in the middle of the night, you're sleeping, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is not the middle of the day where people are working, even under the current situation, where there still would have been a chance where that place would have been maybe half occupied or a fraction of the occupation, going on there. My wife is from Korea, and I have to, she remarked to me, she was just like, this looks like a third world country. I said, it looked like something had bombed the building.
It did, it really did, yeah.
I mean, these are images that I think about, like in Lebanon or whatever, but Korea had, gosh, I don't know what it was, 75, 85. Anyway, it was 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, there was a horrible, horrible department store collapse. And, in Asia, the department stores are multi-story. They'll be like 7, 8 stories high. Because there's like a grocery store kind of a thing in there. Then there's all the different levels for, your toys and your apparel and all that kind of stuff. We're old enough that we remember the best, but in Asia, they'll be, 7, 8 stories or more. And then on the top stories are usually nothing but restaurants. And my wife was saying about this one department store that collapsed. It also apparently had a pool at the top. But it killed a lot of people. Korea has a problem, just like I think China, though Korea I think has rectified this, is that they have a word in Korea, words of Korea called bali bali, and that's basically hurry hurry, kind of rush. And this has been a complaint of a lot of Koreans for a long time in the past, was just that they were shoddy workmanship because they were more interested in completing the task, getting it done, than getting it done right and at a quality and making sure things. But a lot of people got trapped. The building basically pancaked, and people got trapped. Lots of people lost their lives in this. So this is, this reminded her of that, that collapse. And I don't know. I mean, I really don't have any idea of what happened here. I remember I saw some headline that referred to that building had been kind of sinking a little bit for years. I don't know if that's true. This is going to take a heck of a lot of investigation. But first, they've got to get through that search and rescue period, right? And then what's going to be, unfortunately, inevitably, the recovery period.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing the picture of that, and I don't know how they got the footage of that. I mean, I saw a clip that showed the actual collapse, and yeah, it just looked like like a demolition. It looks like it was a planned demo. The way it came down, it just like floor to floor just came down. So. You're not used to saying that. I mean, I remember still, the Oklahoma bombing, where it's like, you took out the side of the building, it could see inside, but nothing collapsed. You'd think what kind of structural deficiency had to be there where, it actually would cause entire floor to collapse. I mean, I know once it starts, you can't really stop it, but, what was the trigger for that? What happened? Was there an inherent structural deficiency or what? So, yeah, I don't know. That's tragic.
Yeah, and what the building wasn't really all that new. I mean, people have been in. I mean, it wasn't this thing as well. So it's just it's a terrible tragedy. I mean, our thoughts and our prayers go out to all these people, for this, and we hope that they'll be able to find some more. I mean, there are those miracle stories that we have seen from around the world with things like this that have happened in other countries where, even a week later or more, that somewhere there'll be an air pocket or just enough where people have managed to figure out how to survive for a week or more. Maybe there's leak water somewhere and they're able to survive on that for a little. So we'll hope that the numbers will not be too horrible, but it doesn't look good when you look at the initial pictures of what's going on there. But the community's rallying there. The politicians are all, have been very much in unison as well. So, one of the things about America that I do love about this country is that we will, unite around these tragedies, these things that happen, and I think there will be a tremendous amount of support for the families, the ones that are left behind, all kinds of things that are going on there. I do feel that that community will be taken care of one way or the other. You know, whether or not it's just the local people or whether or not, you know, it's people from around the country that pitch into GoFundMe campaigns, and who knows what that will be required going forward. But this is a terrible, terrible tragedy for us. And so once again, our thoughts and prayers go out to those people. I do want to bring this up. This is political, but I think I want to get your opinion about this. So the New York State held a bunch of primaries, but the one that was the big deal was in New York, and not just because it was the Republican primary was, interestingly enough, I mean, Curtis Sliwa, the old Guardian Angels guy, you know, I mean, he's still around. It's amazing. So he's a Republican nominee, but you know, the chances that he, in a city where I think the registration is at least 6-1 Democrat, you know, he doesn't really it's going to be a very uphill battle for him to win. But there were 13 people on the Democrat side that ran, and they decided to use ranked choice voting.
Yeah, I remember saying that. Yeah.
Right. So this is an interesting thing because, right, this is the first time they're doing it. It's a little bit of a, so it is an experiment. I think, you know, the idea behind this was that, well, they figured no one was going to get 50% of the vote or whatever, and then they were going to have a runoff. And they were trying to avoid the runoff, and they figure ranked choice voting, which has become very popular with Democrats, is the way to do it, because you go in there and they give you rank your top 5, 1 to 5. And then after the votes are counted, you know, we'll look at the number 1s. If it's not enough, then we'll look at the number 2s, and they'll go down the line until they get an absolute winner. But what struck me about this is that, okay, I understand, you know, the desire to avoid a runoff, you know, because that means they'll probably have to wait 4 more weeks and go through this process, and people have to go back to the polls. On the other hand, you know, what they did say was that it's going to take weeks before they figure out and declare a winner. So
yeah, I thought it's like, you know, months, but yeah, it's weeks because.
Yeah, are we really that much better off? And some of the pictures I saw initially for this is that I was going like, what is this? You know, they were confused.
I saw the press conference where they tried to explain it like pizza. Like, you know, pick your toppings for pizza. Like, you know, and he started off with like weird. He's like, you know, I like the green peppers. You know, and this may be controversial, but I like green peppers. And then, you know, I like olives. I don't, you know, it doesn't matter if they're black olives or green olives, but, you know, that's my second choice. And, you know, I was like, okay, it's, you know, I kind of follow that. But the thing I didn't kind of get, maybe you can help me understand this. So, like, my understanding is that, so if there's not one person that gets 50%, then the person with the least number of votes, the last place, gets knocked off.
Right.
And then those votes that would have gone to him go to the second place candidate. Is that like the second choice,
right?
Or the
second choice on those ballots,
okay.
Right?
Okay.
So those get reallocated, and you know, and if that is not enough, then the next candidate down at the end, that person those votes are reallocated based on their second choice. I don't know. I mean, it just seems kind of crazy to me. I mean, look, you know, so I do this kind of 2-man show on Wednesdays with an old colleague of mine who's from Louisiana. He lives in Reston, Virginia, and so Louisiana has, you know, they do jungle primaries basically down there. You know, everybody runs, and the top 2 people, you know, if they don't get that 50%, they have a runoff. Could be the same party, could be different parties, whatever. You know, I'm always like, I don't know about. I thought this, to me, you know, having grown up where it's like you vote this way and this is the way you vote, when they start throwing in these other mixes, I'm like, you know, it seems to work in Louisiana, and you know, California's doing it, which has created some interesting results. Not all that have been very favorable for the Democrats sometimes, but you know, this to me says, I don't know, you know, they haven't used it in a general election. They're doing a primary, but if I were the Democratic Party of, you know, in New York, I'd be thinking like, maybe we don't want it again yet or something. You know, I mean, they'll have to see how this all works out in the end. But you know, it does give, I guess, you know, the lesser known candidates a shot, right? I mean, in the sense of,
sure.
You know, most of the air in the room gets sucked out by the top 2 candidates or whatever. if somewhere in the middle after and you're trailing those guys, you don't have quite as much money. You still have a shot theoretically of making it somewhere. So, but we'll see what happens in this. My bet would be is that former cop Eric Adams will probably be the next mayor. But New York is funny. I mean, the politics there can be very strange, and so you never know. Like at least he's not an outright socialist as some of the other candidates on the ballot are. So
yeah,
at least,
I think I saw that he was
work that way.
Did he have like 24%, like as far as that his lead? So I mean, it was like I think it was like in the low 20s,
Right.
and I had like 16 or something. So there really wasn't much of a point difference between the two of them. And
Right.
I don't know. It's like I'm almost like tempted to try like like the NBA kind of playoff style where you have like two classes. You got East versus West, and just like go to head. Candidacy is like, okay, we got these two people versus these two people, and then the winners for those you fight each other and do like a double elimination or something. I don't know. It's
yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this turns out. I mean, the Democrats will probably win the general election come November, but in the meantime, it's just I don't know. I guess if you're the Republican, you're like if you're Curtis Lee, who can be controversial in his own right, you're probably like this just looks like another mess by the Democrats. But just as a word to the wise, you just see what they did with this primary election. Do you really want to vote for these guys? I don't know, but we'll see. After 8 years of Bill de Blasio, that's probably Curtis Lee was best hope is that they would want to turn in a different direction after all of that, because particularly with the pandemic, I think de Blasio really just I think if this had been de Blasio's first term, I think it would have been extremely hard for him to win a second term after all of that stuff from COVID.
Yeah, I haven't really kept up too much.
The nursing home thing really hurt.
But I mean, New York has its own little set of issues, and I follow. I may have mentioned it before. I follow a guy who owns a Mac repair place in downtown New York, and he talks a lot about not just Mac repairs, but he talks about like some of the local politics and some of the issues that the small businesses face down there. And I'm still surprised that there's such a hold your cards kind of mentality when it comes to property down there. It's like they don't want their properties to decrease in value, so they don't let them be rented out for less than they think they're worth, because if they rent them out for what people could actually afford, then the value of the property would decrease because they're renting it for less than it's what the book value is for it. But as it is right now, you've got all these vacancies that nobody can afford, and the property owners are just sitting on it. So really nobody's profiting. It's almost like it seems like a bubble that's waiting to burst. And I'm not really sure what the solution is, but I look at that and I'm like, there's got to be a better way to deal with this. So I don't have the solution per se, but I know New York is struggling in ways that are unique to its own microcosm of its own economy. But it's almost like it's of its own making, because the way they built things structurally and the way that people use property as kind of their investment, you don't want to see almost like stocks. You don't want to see the value go down, so you kind of keep your cards close to you. But what that ends up doing is it really affects businesses to be able to move in. And so at some point, you got to show or fold. You can't really just hold on to them, until well, at some point you have to basically show your cards. Is what my point is.
Right,
so.
right. And I mean, look. I mean, I think we can both agree that after COVID has restructured our entire economy in the way a lot of things are done. So we'll see what other things will be changing, with our lifestyle and our economy going forward as we continue to kind of get America reopened and see how people are reacting to all the various things that are going on out there. All right, now you mentioned something before the show, and so let's talk about this for a few minutes, which is Rudy Giuliani's law license being suspended. At this point, okay. Rudy Giuliani, very popular when he was the mayor of New York. Was and things.
After 9/11, so.
Right, he served as an attorney for Donald Trump, which may or may not have been the best decision in the world for him career-wise. I don't know.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot of backlash for some of the 4 seasons total landscaping. I don't know if that was intentional, but that certainly has kind of been his mark now, I think.
Yeah. So I know Dwight was on the show. Dwight probably loves the guy and everything. Dwight loves a lot of things about New York, and he'll say some things about some of the New York Republicans that he's known over the years. But I try to be somewhat realistic about this. It's like I was all for Rudy York, and he did some other things afterwards, and I didn't have a problem when he ran for president and all these other things and stuff. That's all well and fine. But I just thought that as of late, as Trump's attorney was a little, strange to say the least. And I'm not exactly crying over suspension of a law license. Whether or not that was really justified or as part of a vendetta there, I don't know. I didn't look into it deeply enough, but it's not something I'm like now.
Yeah, so we talked way before, like Jan 6th, about the erosion of the confidence in the electoral system, just in general, because even before then there were all these stirrings about dissent and how things aren't fair and those kind of things. So, and again, this isn't. I'm not trying to make this personal, but Rudy, being a lawyer, is held to a higher standard when it comes to certain statements than ordinary citizens are. So, especially if you're representing a client, and you're making statements that you are presenting to the press, you're just held to a higher standard. It's like a professional thing. It's like, even if you were an NBA player, you could be held accountable for things you said, in your personal space, because you still represent the NBA. As a lawyer, you represent the bar. You represent the whole profession, and so there are things that you are allowed and not allowed really to say. And when you start saying things that are either unfounded or disputable, and you don't have any evidence to back it up, that's that can get you in some trouble. And from what I've seen, he had a I won't say inquisition. He was the bar, or the New York State's, I'm not sure what organization it was that actually looked at it, but they basically said, hey, you said these things, you need to show where you got these statements. You can't just say unfounded things. And from my understanding, Giuliani did not back up his statements with any authoritative sources. He said he had them, but from my understanding, based upon the complaint, he didn't provide any of those sources. He said that there's some confidential sources that he used. He said that there were other sources that he couldn't disclose, but he basically did not provide any of his sources for this material. And so, at that point, it almost just becomes an unfounded kind of allegation at that point. And you can, this is not a Giuliani thing. This is just a professional thing. If you as a lawyer start saying things that are unfounded, that can get you in professional trouble. So I certainly understand that ruling from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, here's the thing. The thing with me too is just that, yes, Rudy is an attorney. I mean, he took an oath in terms of how he was going to conduct himself. He is and representing clients and whatnot. And then he and then Sidney Powell, who was also another attorney. Sidney Powell actually did a relatively good job, defending Michael Flynn. But when she moved over to the whole Donald Trump thing, and then with Giuliani, I just think things went right off the rails. Just that you guys are, you two are very competent attorneys. Do not, I mean, the law is the law. Interpret the law. If you've got accusations, if you've got evidence, present it and make it clear, but don't obfuscate it, try to do things because President Trump says, I want you to present this and make this case for me. If there's no reason to make that case, then don't do it. I mean, I realize this could get me in trouble with Trump supporters, but I think this is part of the problem, is that we have to realize, Republican, Democrat, whatever. But look, if you support Donald Trump, that's fine. I mean, I voted for him twice, and and I will stand behind my vote. On the other hand, you've got to be bored, and when you're an attorney, even more so in that case, you've got to represent your client honestly. And those guys, they got ripped, apart. And a lot of, conservatives will say, "Oh heck, that they're." Jason wants to know where Dwight is. Dwight's in Florida, or somewhere between here. Okay, where are you, Jason? Why aren't you on the show? Call in.
Yeah, come join us. Come join us. We'll let you in.
As so we can see you. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know how long on the suspension is for necessarily on this, but he'll fight this and whatever. But it's just another little kind of black mark against Rudy. He's a good enough lawyer. He didn't need to get into all of this and have this happen.
Well, it could be kind of his parting, message too, because I don't know how much he was planning to continue to be in the law practice. So this may just be something he's just, he's okay with retiring from the law practice. I don't really know. It's just speculation, but this would definitely, I think, be difficult to recover from, because this certainly has put a bit of a black eye on his records, even if he's able to stand up to the charges. So I don't know. It's again, I try to separate the rhetoric from the actual, issues. So yes, I mean, you can be unhappy about the election results. You can look at, how things could have changed and what we need to do to get the votes next time. And but at some point, you basically just, I say need to move on, but you need to say, that our opportunities for, protesting this have expired. That whether or not you support it or not, you have to accept it. That's just part of the process, because again, I understand the angst. I understand that, that this really hurts, because there are people that, that feel strongly about this, and that's fine. I totally get that you have strong feelings. That's nothing wrong with that. But when you start, pushing on our democratic process and say it's broken and we need to fix this, and that this is, that I hate to say, like that Biden stole the election, that really starts putting, a level of mistrust and undermining the whole system that leads to things like the January 6th, incident, where you have people that are so riled up because of this that they feel like the only way to fix this is to, take matters into your own hands. And that's the danger that I see, is that, I don't think we're at that point. Yes, there are processes to reform these situations like we talked about, like in Georgia. There are attempts to try to get, questionable practices codified, so we don't have any question about, should it be this way or should it be this way. Again, you can agree or not agree with some of those things, but that's the way to do it. You work through the issues and say, okay, these were the weak points last time. Let's strengthen those, make them, stronger, so that it's not a question next time. But when you start throwing things in these allegations like dead people voted, and that illegal immigrants voted, and all these other things that supposedly happened that you can't back up, then you have people, a certain percentage of the people will believe that, whether or not it's founded or not, and then those people will insist that this is a problem that we need to be fixed, when it may not actually be a problem. And so you kind of divert all the lawmakers' time and effort, investigators' time and effort, as to looking at these like red herrings that, yeah, obviously if there's legitimate cause for concern, absolutely investigate that. But at some point, after things have been not just machine counted but hand counted, you just have to say, well, yes, we have a certain level of trust in the system that we just have to accept.
Right. And here's one of the things that bothers me about a lot of these things, is that Biden and Democrats are now talking about our democracy at risk. We're under attack and all of these things. To me, democracy is just fine, but they using January 6th and all the fallout of January 6th to say they're able to then, take those people that were involved in January 6th and anybody else who supports that, is even remotely tied to it, any Trump supporter, and put them into that same broad brush, and say, if you allow these people, who's trying for reelection, you're endangering our democracy. So all of this has led to another Democratic narrative that I think is false, but has gained some traction, particularly liberal media, because of all of this. Now, at the same point in time, you mentioned January 6th. What is interesting is that former Vice President now come out and said, attempt, to decertify the election, basically, by having one person user is un-American. So he was throwing some shade. Trump directly Pence to do was to, use, basically say, override, those certifications and say, no, I think the election was stolen. Therefore, Donald Trump is still the president going forward. And Pence made the point that that has not happened before. We can't do that. That's not something that's called for in the Constitution. And therefore, and you're right. Here's the we are now, what is it, about a little over 5 months, right, since Inauguration Day. We're not going to reverse this election. If you want to think the election is stolen, you have every right to think the election is stolen. If you've got problems with election, fine. But we're not going to be able to relitigate this thing. This is it. Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Okay, Kamala Harris is the vice president of the United States. You don't have to like it, but that is the fact. But it is time to kind of accept that. And to me, and I know I'm sure I've said this before, is that what Republicans, whether or not they're the grassroots Republicans or others, that continue to talk about the legitimacy of the presidency and all of these kinds of things, you're going after the wrong thing right now. We have a midterm election in 2022. We will have another. Things are actually looking pretty good for the Republicans for the midterms, at least for the House, maybe even for the Senate. We'll see how this shit a little bit more, but we are, ever so close to that 1 year mark, where when we hit, we're about in the next 3 or 4 months, there's going to be a heck of focus on the midterms than there is right now, but it's definitely in the back of the mind of every single congressperson that's out there, because they're going to be up for re-election. And there's about a third of the Senate election. So, they're thinking about it, particularly the ones that are in areas that may have gone for Trump in the past, but, they won their seat and they're still, it's still maybe a +2 or +5 or whatever it could be for the Republicans in their districts and whatnot. So you got to, they're slightly safe that are serving in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. So they're going to be looking out for that, everything that they do from this point on. Concentrate on that. We need the Republicans. They need to regain the House. That'll blunt the Biden administration. I mean, the Senate is holding its own as much as they can under Mitch McConnell, but there's an onslaught there at 50-50. There's no room for error. I mean, Mitch McConnell has got to pull out. He's got to pull every trick in this book. He's got to do every maneuver he knows. He's got to pull that out to keep things so that he can kind of slow down, if not outright stop the Biden agenda. Now, if they can get a Republican-controlled House, that makes his life a heck of a lot easier, because there's going to be legislation that'll never even make it to the Senate, that they have to worry about. So focus, the bigger prize right now is the House and regaining control of the Senate. And then down the line, looking at 2024, if Biden and Harris keep, flailing away as they're doing now, that's a very good setup for the Republicans. But if, the further we go along, the more the 2020 election is in the rearview mirror. Quit doing this. I really time, Jeff, with people Republicans, conservatives who are acting like Hillary Clinton and Al Gore and Joe Lieberman initially, on the contested elections, on elections that they thought they would have won, and they whined about it for a long time. And Republicans, conservatives, we talked about that. We talked about it back, during the Gore Lieberman days. We talked about it after Hillary Clinton, in terms of, look at that. She just can't let go. She refuses.
Right, yeah, we made fun of her for that. So
she refuses to admit that she lost, to come to grips with she lost election. Well, yeah. Hello, Donald Trump. You lost the election. Let's come to grips with this. Let's move on. Republicans elected in 2022 and 2024, and then things will go back the way we want it to be a little bit more. But don't be that guy. Dwight always says, I hate to be that guy. Donald Trump, don't be that. Okay, I'm going to use Dwight.
We need to focus on the policy, not the past. There are things we need to make, actually inroads on. There are, we have our own set of, I say agenda, but we have our own, policy that we need to push forward. We need to focus on that, and we need to get, like I said, there's no room for error at this point. We need to get a stronger base on board for that. And yeah, if that means getting everyone to hold hands and say, okay, yes, we know this hurts, but let's get through this together. But now there's almost like a schism in the in the party, because you got the people who are diehard that believe that the election was stolen because this was the narrative that was given to them, that, for whatever reason, feel like, that Trump is the rightful, leader of the country, and they want to support their representatives that believe that narrative. And then you've got other people that may be more moderate that say, okay, Republican Party is kind of losing touch with reality, because if they spend all the time and energy focusing on these non-issues, then we can't really move forward. So I think there's got to be some coming together where the Republican Party says, okay, yeah, what is our plan going forward? Let's focus on getting us to the next election cycle. Let's talk about who we're going to represent, what kind of policies and agenda we need to push forward, and then get the party behind it, because we still have issues with employment. We still have issues with with not just NATO, but with some of the foreign countries we're dealing with. There are issues that we need to stand forward on, stand united. And again, we can have discussions about what are the top issues, but we need to move the focus forward and start talking about actual agenda items that we can start getting our base behind.
Right. And look, I mean, Donald Trump can play a very big in the 2022 and 2024 elections, and that's fine. He has every right to play a part in this in whatever way he fit, and I don't have a problem with that. And he could be a force for good in that sense. Now, what you just said was interesting about some of these foreign things, because I want Craig Yoakum has come. I do want to get your reaction to this. He says Russia and China are having a field day with Biden-Harris policies. Agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Biden is not a strong president. He is. I think he is trying to be everything for everyone, and I appreciate his desire to try to build bridges. But with some countries, you have to be strong. Now, I didn't always agree with everything that Trump did with the China policy, because, again, I think like tariffs are a two-edged sword. We got to be very careful how we use those. That being said, you have to have someone who's got a spine, a backbone. Biden, I think, is punting on a lot of these things. He's just saying, okay, let's get back in the game. Let's not really deal with these tough issues. And I don't know if it was talked about specifically, but I think it was last week, the week before, we talked about like the policy about having extradition between Russia and the United States for what we consider criminals to be, so that in theory Russia would extradite criminals to us and we'd extradite criminals to Russia, but it's really not an equal playing field. And we do have some advantage over certain countries. Like I said, I mean, I've said before that China economically we're kind of beholden to at this point, but from a political standpoint and from a economic standpoint, from companies too, we do have some control. We have control over how we deal with a foreign policy, especially when it comes to a lot of the policy that Russia has and China has with other countries. So when Russia deals with Ukraine, how they deal with them, we can affect that. How they're dealing with Turkey and Syria, we can affect those kind of policies. How China deals with North Korea, we can potentially affect those kind of policies, but we need to be strong and have a specific agenda when it comes to those policies. Otherwise, they're just going to do what they want to, and we'll be like, well, we didn't really say no, so.
Right. No, and you're right about that, because I mean, and this is part of the problem. I mean, Trump, he just upended foreign policy big time. I mean, I can't. I am not going to say anything that he did, or all the methods and things like this, but I think there was definite evidence that his tough talk and some of the action he had did get some results. People understood after Trump was doing various actions with really, like, they were like, oh, wait a minute, he's serious.
Yeah, we can't ignore him. Good or bad, we can't ignore him.
Right, you can't ignore. He is not doing the way every president had been doing business for forever and ever. Mm-hmm. So we better understand the way he's thinking and what he's doing there. And so, and we can see, by the unraveling of a lot of Trump-type policies overseas, foreign policy, of exactly what you're talking about. I mean, Biden does not have a strong feeling on this whole foreign policy, which is for a guy who spent 36 years in the Senate and supposedly had all this experience. This is really disappointing that he is basically just puts his finger to the wind and says, okay, which way is this going? This is the way I will go with that. Having this summit with Putin, where he's like, what was the purpose of that? I mean, he's trying to talk a little tough on China, but, I'm pretty skeptical that he's really going to do anything about China. I mean, they want, the Wuhan, he wants on the Wuhan, lab, investigation. He just came out with something about, what's happened in Hong Kong with the Apple Daily that has shut down, where after they arrested the co-owner and publisher, threw him in prison, where China has really totalitarian control of Hong Kong. I mean, they're shutting down free speech, and anything that anybody who dare is going to wind up in jail. And Biden, they've made a statement about this, but they're not going to take any action, right? I mean, as you said, they're beholden to China, so it's like we'll throw out a few statements. But I would have been interested to see, would Trump? I have a hard time believing that China would have taken the, even that control, that the actions they took in Hong Kong. I mean, if Trump had been in office, I think they still would have been thinking, it's like, if we do this, what is Trump going to do? A little bit.
Yeah, he's a bit of a wild card. Whether or not they most foreign countries can kind of anticipate, what America's response is going to be in a lot of things, because obviously they've thought about how we're going to respond in a lot of these situations. But Trump was, like you said, definitely was not someone who you could just say, yeah, we know he was going to respond. He had his own way of dealing with, with the foreign leaders. So I don't think either China nor Russia had any clue about like what he was really on his mind. And perhaps even like North Korea, like, with Kim Jong-il, maybe they got along better because they just felt like they both kind of respected each other's ability to just control the situation. So again, good or ill, it's like, you had to pay attention to Trump. And now it's like Biden is like, like I said, he's just kind of, letting things go the way that he thinks is favorable, but without really setting any particular restrictions in place. So what is the really point of it? I mean, it's like I said, the summit was basically just to introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm the new president. Hope we can get along. I don't know.
All right, we're going to move on to another topic here before we wrap up the show. But Craig had a couple of comments, and just for the sake of saying that he had that Iran manipulated Obama, and Iran can do it again with Biden. I think we're already seeing some evidence of that. Turkey, a NATO member, arms from Russia. So just a couple of comments from Craig about some other things that he's noticed on foreign policy. Another topic. Another thing that you had mentioned, which is also worth discussing, was this whole Justice Department action in Georgia on the vote legislation, the bills, and things like this. Now, they had already telegraphed the Justice Department that they were going to be looking at this. That they'll look at this because Georgia's already passed theirs, Texas has passed a different type of bill, but something Georgia and Texas have done things that the liberals don't like, the Democrats don't like, though the general reporting on this has always been tends to be about stuff that was discussed but not passed. There's a lot of discussion, and there was what was actually passed, and that tends to be is usually not the same thing that was discussed and proposed, but the media, in Georgia initially, all the liberals got the media, got the corporations all involved in saying, "Oh, this is terrible."
Yep.
But most of these corporations, these executives, I'm sure they never read the law. They were just reacting to what these people were saying, and the media was buying into. It was the final law that was passed, and the same thing was happening in Texas. I don't know what the Justice Department is really going to do, except that they just want to show that they're going to try to flex their muscles a little bit on this, or scare some potential Republican state legislatures about trying to do this. But what bothers me about this, and every time I see the the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world, is that it's all when they're talking about Governor Abbott or Governor Kemp or anybody else, any Republican governor, and the Republican state legislature, this is all about voter suppression. They never mention the word voter integrity and trying to clean up some things and stuff like that. I mean, there was some story. There was a big thing about, Georgia was dropping something like 100,000 people from the rolls. Well, that's like this, the big signal for the liberals is like, oh no, we can't have them do that. But in Maryland, we've tried for years and years and years, of trying to get, the State Board of Elections to try to clean up the rolls so that people who are on there are actually people who are still living here, still, and still may vote. Back, gosh, it's probably been over 30 years by now. But I remember when I was a precinct chair at my previous home, the Board of Elections would send out about who's in the precinct and who voted and stuff like that. And and I would occasionally look through the list because I was kind of curious, particularly for the Republicans, seeing if I knew anybody, because it's hard to find a Republican in Montgomery County, right?
Right.
And I would see these names, and I'm like, but they moved like, why are they still, the state 5 years ago? Why are they still on these rolls? And apparently, State Board of Education had a whole bunch of arcane, very they had at the time about how to remove it. They were never really keen on removing people from the rolls, even if it meant keeping. I mean, my daughter. Okay, this is a problem that has to be fixed. My daughter married for what, about 10 years now, I guess, maybe. She got married in, I guess it was 2008. 2009. I can't remember the exact year, but anyway, so she's been over 13 years. She has not lived in the state of Maryland for that period of time. She's lived in Utah, Iowa, and now in Indiana. I still get, from Montgomery County, I still get her ballot, her mail-in ballots and stuff like that, especially during the pandemic, all that voter info stuff, it still comes. Because they want her to do something and say, I'm here. But she's voted in these other states. She would never vote in Maryland because she's not a Maryland. She's sitting it's just, things have got to be cleaned up. But the Democrats are like, they take this as like, oh no, you can't touch these people. And you're disenfranchising people. But I think state legislators have done a lot to try to make it, easier in terms of, like, if you need a voter ID, we'll give you one. They try to do these things. I know I'm never really in sync with everything that, say, Georgia's done or Texas has done, but you probably are not really crazy about having the Justice Department come in here and try to kind of screw things up or try a little bit.
Right. So, I mean, first of all, to your point about Maryland, so my dad lives close to my brother-in-law and sister, and apparently I've been like registered to vote at his property, which I've never lived at for like the last 20 years. So I used that because he's literally like next door to me. So I used to hit my voter registration there when I moved back to Maryland in 2020. As part of my voters, because again at that point I didn't have a problem with it because I lived in Maryland. But yeah, I mean, getting that stuff changed, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I'm like, why would they send me all this stuff year after year when my license was not Maryland? I had nothing in Maryland, and anything that wasn't Maryland wouldn't have been at his place because I don't have anything. I don't have a bank account. I never lived there. How did I even get that address as being where I was? I still don't know. So weird, but
you just mentioned something that I hadn't even really thought about before, is that why can't the State Board of Elections do a cross match with the driver's license registry or something? And if do it with vehicles, if the people, motor vehicles, if they go to they should. I mean, they're state agencies, right? Why can't they trade this? Why can't the DMV basically say, here's just tap into the system or whatever, or here's the latest registered Maryland, match it up against your voter rules, and if you got a Christy, if you're saying Christy Irvine lives here, but we're not showing it here at all for her, then something may be amiss, and you may want to investigate that further. Not everybody has to have a driver's license to live, because we don't require voter ID in Maryland, but still there are ways of trying to verify some things that would make it a lot easier. and at least my general thought had always been like, look, for like 10 years, it's like, can't you just automatically just purge these people? If they haven't voted in 10 years, what's the likelihood they're going to vote,
Right.
after that period of time? And if we re-register them, we're doing same-day voter registration anyway, so what the heck?
Yeah, and so I mean, excellent points. I mean, so like I said, it's not a big deal if you're like living here to get it changed, because it's the website's pretty obvious how to get it to change, and there's no I had no hassle getting my registration changed from that address to where I'm living now. But again, like if you're not in state, why would you even care? Like you're not going to go to I'm not going to go to Michigan's website and say, yeah, I'm no longer a resident here. Please take me off. I don't live in North Carolina anymore. Please take me off. I mean, those kind of things you just assume are going to happen if like you got a vehicle that's expired or license that expired or something. You haven't filed taxes last year when you normally do. I mean, there should be signs that they can use to say, hey, maybe this person really doesn't live here anymore. Let's purge them from the records. And then if they have a question about it, send them a letter saying, hey, unless we hear back from you, we're going to take you off the voter registration. Something simple like that, I think, should be fairly easy to do.
Well, all right, and actually, I think both Florida and Georgia did that. I mean, before they purged the rolls, cards to all the voters that they were targeting, to the registered address they had on the voter rolls, and said that they had to respond within whatever time, 30 days, 60 days, or whatever. And if they did not respond, then they would be removed from the rolls. I think that is a legitimate thing to do. Is that they've given them, and we're saying like, look, if you don't respond, boom, here it is. And I'm not sure in the state of Maryland whether or not, when election materials are sent, like the voter registration guides, whether or not it just gets forwarded, or just goes to the address, and if the address, if the person doesn't live there or whatever, whether or not it actually kicks back Board of Elections or the County Board of Elections, or whether or not the post office.
Go to the post office to come up with an agenda for that, because again, most stuff that's like official correspondence does get forwarded. So I've had stuff that was sent to my Michigan or North Carolina address get forwarded. Governmental correspondence get forwarded to my new address. So I don't see why that would be a problem too. Because if you send a postcard that says, yeah, this post office has a new address on file, maybe the post office is the best place to go as far as like where they're living, because most people do forward their mail. Maybe they know better.
Yeah, that's you bring up this thought that just hit my head. It's like, yeah, why don't you go to the post office and register to vote? Well, people really trust the post office to handle their material so well. They've done such a good job with our mail all the time. All right, believe it or not, we've hit the end of the show.
I know. So I do have one question for you that's not political, but it's kind of questionable. So you mentioned about the Florida. What do you think about the whole John McAfee, where he's going to be extradited to the U.S. and then he's like suddenly dead? How do you feel about that? Is this?
I don't know. I mean, I thought I heard that yesterday, and I thought, okay, that's a little. I try to stay from anything that sounds conspiratorial, like because people immediately throw that out there as like he's actually not dead or something something else happened or whatever and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, McAfee. I mean, the guy was brilliant. When he started the company and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. His later years have been a little strange, at least.
Yeah,
and everything like that. But you're
tax evasion, and he said before, that he's basically if something happens to him, he's got all these terabytes of data on the government that he's going to release. I've not seen it yet, but I mean, it sounds weird. It's like one of those kind of setups. It's like, it's almost like asking for a conspiracy theory. It's like he's like, this is one of these legacies. Like he's gonna leave under mysterious circumstances. Like he knows if he gets extradited, he's gonna be spending the rest of his life in jail. So he might as well go out with a bang and kind of make a name for himself. Like nobody's ever gonna know the truth. It's out there, but who's gonna ever find it?
Well, it's almost perfect, right? You're in a Spanish prison.
Mm-hmm.
The tradition, and then they find out or supposedly dead. It's like this is great stuff. This
Yeah, this is going to be a
will
movie on Netflix in a couple months.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The next Netflix documentary was going to be on this.
Yep.
All right, final thoughts. Who's going to go first?
I probably have less thoughts than you, so I'll just say a little bit on the Georgia election, or the Georgia. I don't know if it's House Bill, it's Bill 202, the one that I did read it. It was very difficult to read because it's written in legalese. I tried to get through it the best I could. I actually found, and again, I understand NPR is a little bit left-leaning, but the NPR summary did a good job of just not coloring it, but saying, these are the things that are important about that. There's certainly some good parts of that law where it comes to like ensuring that voting areas are not overburdened. That if there's a certain like line capacity, like if there's more than 2,000 people, they're going to subdivide that. I forget what division it is, but they're going to decrease the size so that it's spread out more, so they have so the voting areas are not as burdened. The stuff that seems a little more questionable is like, all right, so you have a less time to register for absentee ballot. Before it was 180 days. Now it's like it's less than half the time now, which I'm not sure the thought process beyond that. They did strengthen requirements for like showing either a voter ID or state ID or some other proof of identification for your for your absentee ballot, which may be what the Department of Justice is looking at for the potential violation. But regardless, this is for absentee balances. Beyond that, and we've all heard about the the no water and food in line. I'm not really sure if that makes sense, but it's kind of extending off the no solicitation. So I get that you can't solicit voters or bribe them when in line, but understanding that a lot of these districts are overburdened and have had very long lines, there should be some, I say humanitarian effort, but some effort to try to alleviate the burden of being in line for hours and hours. There are not every district has this problem, obviously, but a couple do. So recognizing that at least, I think, should be just a humanitarian kind of thing, where people are able to provide for the needs of the voters that want to vote but are stuck in line. Also, a good thing is they opened up 2 mandatory Saturdays, so it's not just one now; it's 2 mandatory Saturdays. Mandatory hours are from 9 to 5, with optional from 7 to I think 10. Sundays are optional based upon precincts. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. Some of the other stuff that seems a little questionable is that they are restricting the mobile voting options, which they had before in times past, to just if the governor declares that there is an emergency that requires it. They're not going to offer mobile voting centers like they did before. So there is some good, some bad. I understand that this is not, you're not going to please both sides. I think that there is some good in there, though. I think that there is a lot of effort to try and increase voter confidence, and I think that there is efforts to try to alleviate some of the issues with overburdened centers so that everyone is able to, process votes quicker and allow voters to vote quicker. So, again, I tried to look at it very neutral. I think that there certainly are some provisions which will help Georgians, and some that are potentially burdensome, but I don't know if they pass the level of like overburdensome. I don't know if they target a specific demographic, but that's for the DOJ, I guess, to investigate. So that's my final thought.
Okay, just to comment on that, I mean, my understanding of some of the things that you were talking on the food and water thing. My understanding was that what they were trying to kind of cut down on potential electioneering in terms of handing out bottles of water or anything like that had the campaign material, a sticker or whatever on there, because virtually every polling place I think in the country has they set a line of demarcation as to for no electioneering past X point, where you
150 feet I think was what it was in this.
What I understood here was that this did not prevent people from handing food or water out to people that were outside that electioneering line,
right.
Going to them and doing that kind of stuff. So, but my problem was really about how it was portrayed as like they would just melt away and they couldn't get any food or water at all. And it's really not the case. It's the way that it's being framed. I'm not, Dwight would say that election day is election day. I know he doesn't like all this extra stuff. I have become, I try to hold to that when I can, but I definitely have been guilty, if you want to say that, of, whatever the most convenient way is, whether that's early voting or, during this pandemic, voting by mail. That was fine, but I understand the idea of trying to, I have grown up, from the time I was voting. What was it? 1980 was the first presidential election I got to vote in. You had to go. You had to vote. Absentee ballots were only for those that had an excuse and applied for in advance. It wasn't just the wild west of things. And absentee, it overwhelmed the system because they got so many more than they were ready for. It's not. The Republicans actually didn't fare all that badly with the absentee ballots in a lot of jurisdictions. So, but I think people need to be. I'm okay with early voting. I think the absentee ballot thing should be a little bit more was before. Focus in. You can if you give them plenty of chances to early vote or whatever. I'm willing to give that up. And a lot, because to me, if people go in their early vote, and I don't get around to early vote, and I go to my have to wait an hour in line, then I'm just getting old and cranky, so I'm much happier now this way, right? Yeah. So yeah, there are definitely are things out there. It's just there's lots of things that they're trying to tighten up. COVID was a blessing for the Democrats in the sense of they got to see a lot of the restrictions were basically removed because of the pandemic. The problem is trying to put that genie back in the bottle and say, we're going to go back to the way we did things before, more or less, maybe a few tweaks. And the Democrats are thinking like, no, it worked just fine, because they want as many people. We didn't talk about For the People Act, but they're making that big push where they want to federalize, in essence, our state elections, right? They want to give federal control over our state elections, over the election process, which is not the way it's designed to be. And,
right,
and
exactly.
this is all part of the parcel, all of that kind of nonsense and stuff like that. For my final thoughts, one is another endorsement. Since we start off with McDonald's, I'll give a food endorsement because I just was there tonight. So, as I said before, my wife is Korean, and this is all around the area. And I checked that there are Howard County. I thought Jason was going to possibly. There are some in Anne Arundel County. Bonchon is what they're known for.
Okay.
Korean fried chicken. And so I had wanted to try this, and so the one I had kept passing was in Germantown. So it's about 8 or 9 miles up the road. So we had this plan yesterday. We were going to go to Bonchon, have dinner, and then we were going to do a little shopping, I think at Costco, or do some kind of 1-2 plan set up or whatever it was. Well, so we drive over to Germantown, and we park the car and go over, and I'm like, man, theirs are still up inside. And my wife's like, it's dark. And so I saw a sign that says, go to the drive-thru. We get in the car and we go to and there's no menu, right? The place is closed down. It may have been a victim of the pandemic. And we're like, I can't believe it. So we ate a Habit Burger last night. But my wife was determined, for whatever reason, it seems, and I think she still wanted to go do the shopping thing. So we found one. There's a Bonchon in Kentland, so that's about 8 miles or 9 miles in the other direction from where I live. So we went over there and found that, and they were operating. And so we had chicken, and then there's also another Korean dish called bibimbap. And my wife makes bibimbap.
I was going to ask you, because since I moved to Maryland, I need to find a good place that does the Korean hot pot, the dosol bibimbap. Because I just love that, and I've not found a good in Michigan, and actually especially in Ohio, and even some places in North Carolina, they've had places that do the family style Korean, where they have all the different options like the kimchi and other types of stuff out on the table, and then they're whatever you order is just extra. But yeah, I've not found a good Korean restaurant around here. So do you have a recommendation for one in Howard County or that area?
The our favorite, or I must say my wife's favorite, but I go along with this. Our favorite Korean restaurant is Honey Pig,
Okay.
and there's one in Ellicott City,
Oh, okay. I know that. Yeah.
near where the old Enchanted Forest used to be.
Okay.
Yeah, which I didn't realize until we used to have, because they have one among they have one in Germany, but they only had the one in Ellicott City. So we would drive to the one over in Ellicott City all the time. And I remember looking across the street one day as we were trying to figure where the heck it was, and said, Enchanted Forest? I went there when I was like 8 years old.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at the site now. That looks really good. That's getting my appetite up. So yeah.
Order the meal and everything like that. So yeah, the food there is very good. I mean, it's good and it's popular. We haven't been able to go there during the pandemic, and they converted the one in Germantown to they reorganized it how they were doing it. They actually used to have you could do like the one dinner type of thing and order your meat and have it cooked at the table, or you could and you could also get the extra buffet thing. But I don't know if they ever really resurrected the. We're trying to check in on it. You could actually just do the small little buffet, which was actually not bad. It was pretty reasonably priced. But buffets in the pandemic, they haven't gone along too well with each other, right?
Right.
Pretty tough to run a buffet during the pandemic. We're going to go back.
Well, I do love bulgogi. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, I like it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm just a big fan of the hot pots for some reason. It's like, I just love the bowl with the rice and all the toppings. It's just like, it's something about it. It's just and then putting the sriracha on it. It's just for me that's just like home.
Yeah.
It just really tastes wonderful. So
we haven't been over there, but my wife went over there when she first came to this country. The restaurants over like in Annandale and places like that. There's tons of Korean restaurants, really, really good. I think there's actually a Honey Pig out there too. I think that may have been their first one.
Okay.
And then they expanded throughout the area. So anyway, so we did locate Bonchon, and I will say so. This fried chicken was unbelievable. It's like the best fried chicken I've ever had, because it's not like Popeyes, like KFC. You order the fried chicken in whatever variety. You can order wings, whatever number of pieces you want, and then you can pick like 5 different flavorings on there. And you can go like really spicy, red chili or whatever. And instead of having that the traditional fried chicken kind of skin and all this kind of stuff, when they cook it, it basically each piece comes to you almost like in a glaze, right? And so my wife likes spicy, and she bit into that spicy, like, whoa, it was way spicy for her and everything like that. But yeah, we're going back. We're gonna make the chicken. We were hedging our bets. We ordered the bibimbap and the fried chicken. Next time we're gonna do like the fried chicken and maybe a starter, and instead of like an entree and an entree kind of a thing.
Sure.
Yeah, it was for us. It was like well worth going over there. It was definitely just the best fried chicken I've ever had. Because I was always curious, what the heck is this Korean fried chicken thing? This is everywhere. So
I've never tried that before. So, yeah,
and I got my answer tonight. And I guess just the other thing is with Hunter Biden. Maybe I'm doing this a little bit for Dwight. I don't know, but Hunter Biden is going to, and his artwork. He's going to be trying to sell his artwork for what, $75,000 to $500,000. I don't know. I mean, this sounds crazy and wacky, and even maybe to the extent of influence peddling. It's like, I don't think that Hunter Biden is such a great artist that people are really going to pay him $500,000 because he's a great artist. I think they want more than that.
Yeah.
For that. So anyway, we've gone way over time because we got into this long discussion about Korean restaurants, which will never happen.
He will still cut the time short from what we normally do. So 8:15 is still good for.
We'll never see Dwight in a Korean restaurant, so this will be an unusual thing.
Right.
But with that, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thanks, Craig and David, for chiming in and
Thank you so much.
Jason. We appreciate all your comments. I'm sure. Is Dwight coming back next week? Do we
Yeah, I
know
think so,
what the
yeah.
deal is? Okay, so Dwight will be back in his normal control position with more talk about Nixon Agnew and everything else. But
Yeah.
everyone, thanks for being with us tonight. Have a wonderful night. Have a great weekend and a great week, and we'll see you again next Friday night.
Yep. See you guys. Thank you.